The internet as we know it comes in cycles, ones that increasingly get shorter and shorter as we receive information quicker. Our favorite apps have seen different eras for good and for bad. Twitter saw the rise of the Gamergate era back in 2014, as we've covered, and now most recently is turning very quickly into a knockoff Facebook. Like, why are the top comments a bunch of chuds and the most uninformed, stupid takes ever? Why am I seeing people with Heil in their username? Why, Elon? YouTube is no different. As a giant in the video streaming sphere, the platform has gone through several shifts. Its earliest stage of weird short videos with no other objective except to be memes, I don't know.
Candy Mountain, Charlie! Yeah, Candy Mountain!
Alright, fine, I'll go with you to Candy Mountain.
Or the saga right after that of gaming and other YouTube personalities really solidifying themselves as legends. I feel like I've reiterated this a lot in a few of my video essays, but I want to examine what made these eras so different from each other. What was their individual purpose? 2010 to 2013 brought some of the names we know today. I would say it was YouTube's purest form and personally one of my favorites. It was fully focused on creating and having fun. Young 20-somethings who just want to showcase to the world whatever game they were interested in or their passion for production and comedy. It was grassroots, it was raw, it was real. It brought us personalities like Markiplier, a creator I've always looked up to, and other platform favorites like PewDiePie, Jenna Marbles, Smosh, so many. Of course, there are several cursed individuals that came from this time. Nothing can be perfect, now can it? People who did terrible things, some like actually illegal or just horribly racist and still have a platform for some reason. I don't even want to speak their names. Okay, it'll ruin my vibes. But compared to a more recent YouTube, the personality was a core part of the content. January 17th, 2017, Vine died. RIP. I mean, I didn't really care that much about it, but I'll pay my respects. A platform that only existed for 4 years went down the drain in one swoop. But in that short time, it had created megastars, so where were they to go? Well, they all migrated to YouTube, the old Vine invasion as we call it. It's like those videos where they like stomp on the spider and then like all its babies like scatter out and then you have to vacate your house and burn it down. It's your house now. You can take it because I'm damn sure not gonna live in it. It's giving that like to a T. As we've compared before in the Gamergate video, this was also the start of the first adpocalypse in YouTube favoring the algorithm and advertisers. It was a terrible chain of events. Personality was the main focus of the content, but it hid behind carefully crafted persona, one that was modeled by retention and keeping the audience hooked for as long as possible. It wasn't creation for creation's sake. No, it was only as real as you believed it to be. If you could suspend your disbelief and convince yourself that they were truly being authentic, what I'm trying to say is if you were like 12, then sure, it was as real as old YouTube. The content's real focus, once you looked past the facade, was making as much money as possible. People had realized that YouTube was a gold mine, and boy, were they mining. This era brought the Paul brothers, Liza Koshy, David Dobrik, and Emma Chamberlain. All these creators are carefully crafted personas made to be the next star. The content had celebrity affiliations, cool cars, piles of money, crazy stunts. This is what you wanted to be. I think the Paul brothers are a great representation of the type of content that came from this era, particularly Jake Paul, who is for the most part pretty removed from YouTube. Kind of ironic. His content with Team 10 entirely consisted of humiliating and exploiting people around him to turn every inch of his life into content. It was the original content house, a cage where you were contracted to be his monkey and dance for him whenever he called for you. The whole thing resulted in loads of drama, which led to more views, which led to diss tracks, which led to fake marriages, documentaries. He was the blueprint. Because of it, he can now sit atop his tax-free mansion in Puerto Rico, completely removing himself from the exploitation he perpetuated and honestly continues to this day, because the Puerto Rico thing is a whole nother mess. Even just by looking at these videos from both of these eras, there is a very clear difference. In 2013, the editing was not as fast. Honestly, sometimes it wasn't that good.
What's that? What? What?
It was slower and allowed the viewer to become a part of the video, almost as if you were sitting right there with them. It was an opening into a tiny portion of their lives, and that was at the core of what made YouTube great. It wasn't supposed to be TV level production or completely based on an algorithm's shitty view of good content. It was supposed to be about you. I mean, YouTube's slogan at that time was literally broadcast yourself. It was meant to be this tunnel of connection between ordinary people, and with the introduction of the algorithm, retention, and this thought process of min-maxing revenue, we've lost that. There's still plenty of creators that carry on YouTube's old sentiment. I mean, the platform is made up of millions of creators. I would like to think most of them aren't worried about the trivial aspects of YouTube. When you look at the top of the food chain, the big creators, especially the more recent hit creators, it's a very different story. Enter the platform's #1 creator, a man who amassed 200 million subscribers across all of his channels. He's also the highest paid creator according to Forbes, who uses, according to him, all his money to invest back into his videos and philanthropy. MrBeast. He's known for his high energy content, crazy thumbnails, stunts, and he gets to be friends with Carl Jacobs. Like, that's my dream. What the hell? From virtually the beginning of his career, he created a whole new style of content that perfected this new wave of YouTube. Fast editing, retention focused, high stakes, a formula where the viewer can never look away. This has led to up-and-coming creators copying his style to a T and sometimes exclusively focusing their content around him. He is the it girl. Some would even say the YouTube king. But it's not that simple. While everyone shares a pretty neutral stance on MrBeast, I see a trend being created that I feel is dangerous for the platform, for the medium as a whole. When I was subjected to watching his videos by a certain streamer, not naming names, I started to feel this uneasy feeling about it. Something ticked me off. Didn't quite feel right, but I felt really weird about it because everyone loves him. But with other creators recently sharing similar opinions, I felt more secure in my criticism. We mentioned YouTube legends, right? Well, most of you will probably remember when Jacksepticeye had some things to say.
Now, Jack, a completely unrelated question. Do you like MrBeast? No. Jack, do you think MrBeast ruined YouTube? Yes. Now, in all honesty, Jack, why?
Because it became more about views, money, and popularity than it did about having fun.
You just don't think you had fun playing Squid Games? You don't think you had fun riding on yachts? Building wells in Africa? I don't know.
If he had fun doing those videos, they'd be longer. We'd see the fun.
While this drama has been squared away for a while now, the criticism is definitely still valid. MrBeast is the result of 2017. He is all of those creators I mentioned, minus the other parts. Having a creator like Jack that has been on this platform for more than a decade, I mean, he's seen the best and the worst of this industry. He himself has perfected his craft, definitely in a different direction, but to have him say that was huge. No wonder why the internet exploded with anger, claiming Jack was just mad because he's been played out and no one watches him anymore, which is very wrong, but okay. The audacity to say that his criticism comes from anger that he's not MrBeast. Like, I'm very sure that he is perfectly fine with being himself. I mean, it speaks volumes. MrBeast even came out with a pretty aggro response in a now deleted tweet. Not sigh, bitch. He's completely missing the point, and maybe Jack's short response didn't articulate it well enough, but there are plenty of creators that have, or like 44 minutes. Scratch that, across like at least 10 videos. Pinely has created a long catalog of videos that take a detailed look at MrBeast's impact. These videos articulate the point that Jack was making. His video, The MrBeastification of YouTube, which I will be referencing throughout this essay, has a few main points. Personality is a glass ceiling, and an overall criticism of the style of editing, what feeling it creates for the viewer. In an interview with Colin and Samir, MrBeast lays out a unfiltered perspective on his philosophy of creating content. He explains that essentially personality can only allow you to reach so far. By removing or creating this neutral persona, you can reach a larger audience and ultimately become a bigger creator. As Pinely points out, YouTube becomes more like a TV show and less like YouTube. The creator becomes this game show-like host that is only there to become a deliverer of content and nothing more. But if I wanted to watch a TV show, then I would still be subscribed to DirecTV. This leaves the content feeling soulless and devoid of any connection. I mean, if you really think about it, we don't know anything about MrBeast. I know he has a girlfriend from South Africa, I think, and he's friends with Carl Jacobs instead of me, but that's about it. We don't know what he cares about or what he gets mad at. He's essentially an NPC, nothing more than a vessel with which to deliver content, which at its essence is just conforming YouTube into something it wasn't created to be. As for the criticism of MrBeast's editing style, Pinely explains the effects it has on the viewer and the platform as a whole. This fast, retention-focused editing is exactly what Jack was criticizing. The viewer loses all emotion of the moment because of the constant jump cuts and zoom-ins, devoid the content of any of that. We don't see the fun, we don't feel much of anything, even in these moments that we are meant to be joyful or sad, because Jimmy is too focused on whether his retention analytics look good. Like, who cares? It becomes this formulaic pump and dump, brand heavy content instead of the authentic connection you get from other creators. For content that's meant to be engaging, it honestly turns me off. The way he creates content has completely degraded the long form video and has inspired entire generations of creators almost to conform to it. Even Tommy Ennett, in an interview with Colin Samir, mentions how as a creator he can feel chained to the algorithm.
If Avengers Endgame was on fucking YouTube, they would have cut the incredibly emotional funeral scene because it wouldn't have been good for retention, and that is fucking stupid to say. So I think just remembering that, being acknowledging of that, and then still figuring out your own way to make art is really, really good. And I worry about this sort of current MrBeast climate because it's getting exhausting.
Now, this is mainly a fault of YouTube for prioritizing advertisers over the creators. Of course, the company's misgivings don't rest solely on MrBeast. They can't. But it's a kind of disappointing paradigm to constantly shoved in your face. This is what YouTube has become, and the only way to be loved in this new era is if you aren't even really yourself. It's sad. I mean, if MrBeast is happy with creating that kind of content, that's great for him. For a slew of others to feel they must conform to that standard is depressing to me. Maybe I care too much about this art form. I don't know. MrBeast represents much more than his destitute video style. He has inspired trends much more dangerous than retention-focused content. MrBeast hides behind a carefully crafted brand, but whether he intends to or not, his content uses those less fortunate than him to boost that brand. He says that everything he does is to give back to others, but what if his actions truly show the opposite? Maybe it's important to contextualize the character that is MrBeast by learning more about Jimmy Donaldson. Hold on, but before we talk about Jimmy's background, let's talk about that subscribe button and you clicking it right now. If you like what you've seen so far in the past, now is the time. It's never too late. Also, follow my socials. I have a Patreon, and we all have memberships with cute emotes, badges. Okay, back to the video. Compared to other YouTubers, the information on Jimmy's childhood is very sparse, which kind of goes along with the TV personality vibe I mentioned. Honestly, a TV personality would probably know more about, but that's fine. Not everybody wants to have everything about them on the internet. There are plenty of creators like Corpse and VTubers who we don't really know a whole lot about, but I will say their content is even more personality focused, but I digress. Jimmy was born in Kansas, but was raised primarily in North Carolina, where he's based to this day. He was born to a military family and moved a lot. In fact, he and his brother were kept under the care of au pairs, which I didn't even know was a thing, but it's basically a helper who takes care of housework and childcare. He was also raised in a Christian household, which I feel contextualizes his current morals. Christians will occasionally do missionary work where they spread the word of God. A lot of time this involves trips to less fortunate countries in Latin America and Africa, which has its own icky history, especially when it comes to Protestant or Catholic Europeans. I'm not sure if he's still Christian, but he definitely continues to carry over those ideals from his childhood with the latter concept. His videos in Africa are very reminiscent of that. Fast forward to 2012, and little baby Beast starts making videos. He started off with COD and Minecraft commentary. Other creators who were still growing up at the time, like Sneeko, did the same. It was really funny because teenage Sneeko was way more progressive than full-grown adult Sneeko, which is sad. Like, how do you peak at 13? Jimmy also estimated the wealth of YouTubers, gave tips to up-and-coming creators. His content ranged pretty widely. In 2015, he found his stride with series like Worst Intros. By the middle of 2016, Donaldson had 30,000 subscribers. This propelled him to drop out of college and round up a gang of friends to help him pursue his YouTube career. This includes familiar faces that continue to be featured in his content, like Chris Tyson. He also worked with other YouTubers, even going as far as to get their personal analytics to predict what the algorithm favored. Did I mention he really likes the algorithm? As I mentioned before, 2017 was the final stage of his YouTube formula he had been cooking up all these years. This was when he released the infamous counting to 100,000 video. It took him a total of 40 hours to complete and prove to the world he was willing to do anything to differentiate himself from the crowd. It was at this time that he truly pioneered his style of content, doing out-of-the-box stunts like staying underwater for 24 hours. He's actually psychotic, but like I said, it was very 2017. A lot of his peers like Team 10 were doing pranks and crazy stunts, but Jimmy's were so much further out of the bounds of what anyone else was thinking. It's this reminiscent era he still calls back to. In 2018, with the PewDiePie v T series debacle, can't believe that was that long ago, he got in the good graces of the YouTube legend, buying billboards and advertisements to help Pewds gain more subscribers. He even spelled out sub to PewDiePie with t-shirts at that year's Super Bowl. After that year, the tables would flip and he would become arguably just as big as Pewds. His name was getting out there. Through his work, he ended up giving $1 million to charity, earning the title of YouTube's biggest philanthropist. From there, the content became what it is today, bigger than life videos in the form of contests or huge events. He was officially a household name, becoming the most subbed YouTuber across all of his channels, the highest earning YouTuber, amassing his wealth from not only his content but multiple revenue streams. It's kind of ironic that the man he bought billboards for in his conquest against T-Series, he ended up surpassing. He's won Kids' Choice Awards, Guinness World Records. His record is pretty incredible, but his impact would tell a hidden story. So remember the Colin and Samir vid I referenced earlier? I mentioned briefly that MrBeast had an unfiltered conversation with them, spilling the beans on how exactly he got famous. This is where the personality is a glass ceiling concept comes from, the idea that by removing your own personal opinions and views on the content you are creating, a more neutral position, you can reach higher levels of success. This formula allows you to become a brand, essentially, transcending individuality and representing something more. Of course, the more neutral you are, the more people you appeal to, allowing you to get more views and money. This is an unheard of way of boosting yourself on the algorithm. Normally we hear people telling you to use SEO or have a really good thumbnail, but MrBeast figured out this entirely separate formula. There's this belief that if you get more views, you make the best, most transformative content. I mean, everyone's eyes are on this person. They must be doing something revolutionary, right? I would argue it's the opposite though. I mean, even if you look at TV shows and film, often the most innovative content is coming from indie studios. The more neutral you are, the wider the appeal, but also the more basic you have to become. We see this in musicians who were originally thought-provoking. It's very rare that when something goes mainstream, it retains what made it so special. The same goes for art even. That's why we have gatekeepers who try to keep others from knowing who their faves are, because the moment they reach that threshold, they know they'll lose what made them so special, the reason they connected with them in the first place. YouTube is no different. Of course, it's possible to continue pushing the boundaries no matter how big you are, but especially someone whose entire philosophy revolves around personality being a glass ceiling isn't going to retain whatever it made him so eye-catching. His entire purpose is to throw that away as quickly as possible. Individuality is your downfall. As I said, this philosophy is completely incorrect. I mean, YouTube has thrived on personality-forward creators for 2 decades. That's why people come to this platform, to see shy kings like Saikuno say, "Oh Jesus, we're here," Valkyrie scream at anything ever. I only watch streamers, so I can't reference anyone else, but you get it. You watch me for my amazing, funny, talented, thought-provoking content, despite me being incredibly small. Personality is what carries this platform, or At least it should. 2017 was a really pivotal year. I covered in Gamergate the first adpocalypse that pushed TV content from late night hosts. Content that was not made by the people or for the people. In fact, it was for an entirely different audience of cable watchers. Yet, because of the pressures from advertisers, YouTube quickly abandoned its own creators, completely threw them in the trash. And you have creators like MrBeast recognizing the shift at the time and using that as a way to sustainably stay on top of the algorithm. Instead of correcting course, we continue to barrel down the wrong path. There are plenty of MrBeast copycats who copied this strategy from Colin Samir's video to a T. For the purpose of this video, we will focus on 3: Brent Rivera, Matthew Beam, and Phidias. Kindly in his video did a bit of an analysis on how they successfully copied the style guide, but I want to take an even closer look at the detriment this has had on the platform and creativity as a whole. Take Matthew Beam, for example, someone whose content completely surrounds MrBeast. What a simp. Even just a glance at his content before clicking on it shares an identical resemblance to MrBeast. The thumbnails, the saturation, the premise, even that he promises you money for subscribing. Instantly when clicking on one of his videos, I built MrBeast a giant chocolate bar. You were hit in the face with it.
In this video, I will be building MrBeast, the world's largest candy bar. MrBeast is releasing his own chocolate company called Feastables. Yesterday, I got a phone call from MrBeast asking if I could build him giant candy bars in real life for his video.
I need a favor. Can you make me some giant chocolate bars?
I can.
Can you do it in the next 7 days?
My head hurts and I'm already dizzy. It's only 6 seconds in. Someone save me. He's loud, his editing is incredibly fast-paced. I mean, you already know what exactly is going to happen 11 seconds in. He wastes no time at all, which is good for retention, but honestly makes my eyes hurt from the zooms and shit. Like, slow the fuck down. Just analyzing his content from the start outside of the videos of MrBeast, it's very trend focused. From the beginning, he was focusing on money and challenges and what would blow him up the fastest. And I do get it as a small YouTuber myself, but it's very uninspired when you're just following what everyone else is doing. I do like that he built stuff now. That's kind of cool. Like, he built a Krusty Krab. It still feels as if he's resting on the laurels of MrBeast though and other bigger creators. It has a separate feeling from a collab and an equal partnership and feels more so like he's reliant on them. Matthew Beam has 5 million subs. He's doing pretty well for himself, so maybe this works for him, but his content would definitely be stronger if it was more focused on him rather than chasing fame or whatever will get him constantly more views. Or some balance between the two, since I do assume this is his job. It lacks fervor though, which is sad because he's obviously young and very creative. Brent Rivera is a content creator who has found himself in controversy. He's definitely more akin to the spirit of 2017, prank videos that definitely require you to suspend your disbelief. He's definitely a love-or-hate type of figure, especially after the Tyler Oliveira drama. Tyler accused him of faking his prank videos, which I'm not sure who thought they were real. He honestly harassed the creator for his video, causing a big stir up with Brent's team and the hotel staff. They both posted 2 conflicting accounts of the situation, pointing fingers at one another, but ultimately, it's stupid. And who cares? Very 2017 style. Drama baiting, weird kissing, pranks. It gives me flashbacks I really do not want to have. Analyzing his content, it also has that MrBeast flair to it with the saturated colors and the premise. I built a real life Barbie dream house, living 24 hours on a private jet. I hired 50 real life Barbies. Let's take a closer look. I'm scared.
We're gonna be living 24 hours on a private jet. We can travel wherever, whenever, and pick up whoever we want. So this has to be the craziest thing we've ever done. And it's really, really, really expensive.
Honestly, not as dizzying as Matthew Beam's. It feels more normal. We're still screaming though. That has not gone away, although he is standing next to a plane. Similarly to Beams, we know exactly what is going to happen at around 20 seconds in. A little slower, honestly. The tour is also reminiscent.
Oh my god. So there's a bunch of things that come with this jet, like this PS5, a bunch of snacks, and so much more. This thing is crazy. This has so much room compared to a normal flight. They gave us a fruit basket. Yo, they even have pillows from Genshin Impact. Oh, dude, there's a full nother room. Is that a couch? This is the comfiest recliner I've ever been in. This is literally the nicest airplane bathroom I've ever seen before. What? Even the toilet's cool.
The sound effects, the ad plug, the PS5, it's the show of materiality that we're familiar with that's attractive to us. He also has his posse of white boys as well. You see, there's a pattern here. I definitely can't watch him for like 11 minutes. I will actually go insane. I didn't even make it a minute, but just less than a minute in, we can see the patterns that remind us of this style that is taking over YouTube. Most of his content are these carbon copies of what everyone else on the platform is posting. He and Matthew Beam did the exact same video. Material things, over-exaggerated thumbnails, clickbait, might I add. He's this bridge between 2017 and now. He's combining both worlds. I also haven't mentioned this, but kids content is a huge market. That's a big factor as to why MrBeast and these other guys have huge audiences. They appeal, I would say, definitely on purpose to the sensibilities and interest of kids. The saturated colors, the fantastical thumbnails, and the clickbaits, the subjects, these are not things that older people would be drawn to. Some might, but older teens and adults want to be invested in something tangible, something that means more. If I had to guess though, I would say MrBeast has a larger adult audience than Brent Rivera, since he also appeals to the liberal mind with the saving the trees and the charity work. He doesn't just stay at this level of family-friendly content, but reaches beyond that occasionally. I truly agree with Tommy's statement from the Colin and Samir video. Seeing this algo-focused content being pushed and this pressure that he even feels to uphold that standard is overwhelming. It's frustrating. I feel it too. To cover things that are popular, even if they're stupid. I mean, I try to make my content about what I care about, but it's hard. It feels like you won't succeed unless you conform. As Tommy said it best, just be yourself. Just do what makes you happy. Don't be like everyone else. It's boring and tired. But on another note, we have Phidias, who definitely shares these other characteristics, but touches on a side of MrBeast content that I don't particularly favor. One of his most infamous videos is I spent 100 hours in the world's poorest country. Now, I don't particularly favor the narrative that Africa as a huge ass continent is some desolate poor place. I think it's a white supremacist narrative that has been used to perpetuate that Africans are primitive and can't possibly be as innovative as white people. When Lagos exists in Nairobi, there are plenty of places that are very well developed in Africa, and if you are going to spend your time talking about the slums and these places that lack infrastructure, I think it's important to point out the context of why they're like that. Like the decades of enslavement and the CIA meddling in their elections and governments. You know, I think it's important to point out that these issues don't exist in a vacuum, and instead re-educate people that the propaganda they've been exposed to their entire lives is harmful and is hiding an unforeseen truth. Like, I think that's important, but maybe that's just me. Phidias's video does just that. He goes to Burundi, points at them and goes, "Whoa, you're poor." There's even this part in the video where he's holding up his phone and is like, "This is a phone. You can call people on it." Like they're fucking idiots or something. And the teacher next to him pulls out his phone and is like, "What are you talking about?" He goes into this village and he frames it as if he's trying to help them, even putting in his description a GoFundMe. But throughout the video, he doesn't make an effort to understand them or learn anything about their life, but just makes constant assumptions. All he does is gamify poverty. Assumptions is the theme. Not only in Africa, but with the homeless in America and other poor countries, there are these disgusting assumptions made about the way they live life, how they got there, and the romanticizing their existence rather than educating their audiences or even themselves on the situation, creating this cycle of violence within their work. We in the YouTube community call this poverty porn. Charity is a subject that we view as a sign of altruism. These individuals could have kept their money, but instead gave it to the less fortunate. That's nice, right? I would say it's a bit of a naive spin. Giving to others is beautiful, do not get me wrong, but it also has a history of being used to distract from one's wrongs. Some of the biggest modern benefactors are complete demons. Jeff Bezos doesn't give $2 billion to homeless families because he cares about their situation. No, he himself is the oppressor, continuing this cycle of capitalist violence. He's constantly fought against his workers having autonomy and is the owner of one of the biggest oligopolies on this earth. But he's going to give all his money away before he dies. Yeah, sure. Charity is a but a tool, and people like Bezos and Gates understand that very well. Now, MrBeast is not Jeff Bezos, okay? I truly believe that looking at his background and how he grew up, he believes that charity is the most important thing he could do on this earth. I don't believe that he's a demon. That would be incredibly too harsh on me. But it does contextualize that this type of content may not be as impactful as we believe it to be. When researching the critique of MrBeast, I found a great Muslim proverb that perfectly illustrates this. A man who gives in charity and hides it such that his left hand does not know what his right hand gives. Giving in this public way, especially for content, feels like a show rather than you truly care about it. I mean, at the end of the day, you are generating something from this. I mean, to say that he isn't is naive. This isn't truly a one-way relationship where Jimmy just gives and gives and gives. It's symbiotic at the least. I think it's important to tell the truth of the situation instead of saying that he benefits in no way from this. These videos continue to propel his reign as the YouTube #1, continue to sustain his brand, which contributes to the success of other projects. Even if he isn't taking all the revenue, he's still gaining a lot. And I don't know that these people's lives should be used for that. Does that make sense? And this icky feeling can be felt from his contest style content all the way to his philanthropy channel. When I watch MrBeast's normal content, it gives me this get rich quick scheme energy. There are a lot of videos on YouTube that teach people how to become a millionaire under 40 or different ways to create several revenue streams. These videos shine a light on the systematic failures of America, that people are constantly searching for this hope to bring themselves out of a monotonous job or have the life that they desire. And the only way out for them is this capitalist wet dream to become the boss themselves, when in reality it's a false hope hiding the wrongs of the government. Those videos always make me so sad, and Jimmy's content gives that energy. He uses people's desires for tons of money, whatever reason why that might be, to create this content. I mean, the man made a Squid Game replica, which proves he didn't understand why that show was written in the first place, which I made a whole video essay on. It's not the best, but you can still watch it. Squid Game is a direct criticism of capitalism, the reliance on there being a underclass to continuously exploit, yet he went and made it this fun go lucky video, which by itself would be fun since the show was such a hit, but adding the context of why the way he does philanthropy in other videos, it just feels icky. There's really no other way to describe it. On his other channel, MrBeast Philanthropy, the same feeling is carried over, but this time there's this white savior context added to his selection of subjects, circling back to Phidias. The video We Built Wells in Africa actually does a decent job providing context to what these people go through on a daily basis without water, but certain framing throughout the video isn't my favorite and perpetuates the narrative of Africa being primitive when there are plenty of places in the developed world that can imagine these same conditions. I don't think non-black people will ever understand how frustrating this framing is. The only way white people are willing to show Africa is through this window of selective poverty. It's incredibly frustrating, especially for Africans themselves. I think context is very important when talking about these issues. As I said previously, this town in Cameroon's lack of drinking water is not born out of a vacuum, but the aftermath of colonization. MrBeast is definitely an apolitical figure, but this subject matter he's covering is not. Helping the homeless in America and building wells in Cameroon, all of these matters have context and history that he's leaving out. It's great that he wants to help people around the world. His work would be even more impactful if he didn't perpetuate time-old narratives and instead re-educate his community on why it's like that. MrBeast could very easily do these charity videos in Africa and then couple them with these fun videos on his main channel in that same country, showing the culture or some lens that isn't just their plight. What if he combined the two at the least? In America, we were taught that the homeless and the poor just didn't work hard enough. We are of course taught that Africa is just poor, like all 54 countries in Africa, when all of that is a myth. Context. These matters and these people deserve context. That brings me to one of MrBeast's most controversial videos to date. I will say he hasn't had a lot of controversy though. The curing blindness video. This one made people weirdly upset. I say weirdly because I feel like it's the most tame of his philanthropy videos. Like if you're going to point out one to criticize, I personally wouldn't have picked this one, but it's here where we see the public perception starts to crack and people start to examine how Jimmy handles these videos. In the USA Today article, psychologist Andrea Bonnoir makes a good point about this subject. One potential problem with content like this is that it can be dehumanizing to those who are being helped. When being filmed by an influential figure, there may be a power imbalance in which participants' emotional experiences are commercialized. So honestly, saying it's symbiotic was charitable because it's truly not. Using these people's downfall creates a dependent nature between the parties. It's not equal even without the absence of money. I don't feel this applies to the curing blindness video because I think those people consented, but it can definitely be applied to some of his other videos. Others have also chimed in as well. He does exploit people for personal financial gain when user tweeted Tuesday. The end result is good because some people are getting what they need, but he's not a good person because of it. While it was an amazing piece of altruism on your behalf, why make a video about it? Another user tweeted. Why not just do good with no reward other than self-satisfaction knowing you're making the world a better place? Maybe some people see it as attention seeking. MrBeast responded to the critique on Twitter. His responses always feel not condescending, but like he could possibly do no harm. I get it. As someone who has to face critique for my artwork, it can feel like you're being attacked or your babies are being attacked, but these people were pretty nice with it. I mean, the whole of Twitter might not have been, it is Twitter after all, but obviously there was a good bunch of people who tried to phrase it constructively. Yet Jimmy cannot take that. Not from his peers, or not even from his own audience. How could you ever grow if you can't listen to good-natured feedback? You will constantly just be stuck in this circle of yes man, and I think MrBeast is probably used to that. I will say Jimmy made a tweet that for the first time in his career actually acknowledged that he has to do this because of the systematic failure of the healthcare industry, which I wish he included in the original video. If we look back at the Jacksepticeye drama, his response was similar. It was very defensive and he took no time to understand where people were coming from. Their drama was concluded before the NFL match or whatever, so I assume they talked about it. I do wonder if the conversation ended with Jack capitulating to him or if it was a agree to disagree conclusion. I do hope it was the latter. Constantly being a yes man doesn't do service to anyone involved. I hope with the recent rise of criticism towards Jimmy's content, he will learn to understand where people are coming from. He has great influence and I would love to see him handle these situations with real care, as that is the responsible thing to do. None of this comes from a void. The subjects he covers, the criticism from his own peers, this means something. I don't expect him to become a socialist or something, but I do expect him to understand the gravity of the work he does. If you're wondering, there are several creators who do charity work and intersperse it with their regular content in a way that makes sense and is constructive, raising millions for people in other countries or domestically. They don't gamify it, they do it in a responsible manner, sometimes covering it for weeks on end and not leaving these issues in a vacuum, giving it dimension and justice it deserves. I believe that's fair. MrBeast represents something bigger than himself, not only from his level of influence and fame, but the subjects he chooses to showcase. Subjects that are much bigger than one individual, subjects that take villages and whole countries to solve. They're much bigger than even the people they represent, as they require history and context from decades ago. His videos also fuel questions like the future of YouTube, the future of online creativity, of what we tolerate and what we allow to consume us. Jimmy himself, I'm sure, is a decent person, but his wholesome, family-friendly model for content holds a silver lining, that we as a society value money and materiality over humanity, that we will still refuse to properly contextualize issues and accept narratives that have been fed to us. I know it seems small, just some random dude on the internet. My grandma doesn't even know who he is. He's just a blip. But believe it or not, he's a great representation of what we value as a whole, past and present. I suppose we all are. We may not all have the same hold as Jimmy, but we all tell the tale of the events and the people that came before us. The question is, will we correct course or do as always and continue to barrel down the wrong track? Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. As I was writing this and the Palestine-Israel thing was going on, it felt really stupid, but I tried to remember that a lot of the subjects I choose to write about may be small and feel insignificant, but I choose them because they represent bigger issues in our world. I would like to say thank you to my Patreon members. on the screen right now. You make videos like this possible. And yeah, that's all for me today. Okay, bye.